Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Anna. And I have the pleasure of introducing our speaker tonight. I actually just met her a couple of hours ago, and I'm looking forward to getting to know her more in the couple of hours that I did meet her. I know that I love her, and I know you guys are going to love her too. And I've heard all day that she was great, and she's started out I think about 3:30 this morning to get here. So she's willing to go to any length, and I'm really looking forward to her story. So please, let's give Warren Fellowship by the Sea welcome to Sandy.
Hi, everybody. My name's Sandy Hickox. I'm alcoholic. Glad to be here. Well, I'll be even more glad in just a minute. I want to thank the committee for inviting me. And when I saw the program, I going, oh my gosh, I did not pack the right clothes. I didn't bring any play on the beach clothes or anything. Because usually when I go to a conference, it's just bam, bam, bam meetings. So I'm headed to Walmart after this, I think. And that just makes it nice. And it's good that everybody's here on a Thursday night. That's just amazing. I'll get here in just a minute. I'm waiting for the butterflies to settle down. I'm up here just jackhammering around. I always get nervous because I want to sound like I look, and I don't. I'm not. None of us are. But I always wanted to be, because in my head I look pretty good, but that was not my actions. So and that's the reason I'm here. I have a disease of perception, and it's alive and well in me today. And I don't need to forget that. I don't ever forget. I don't want to forget that that I'm, been here a while, and I don't need to go to meetings anymore. I've been here too long to pick up, to make the coffee in my home group, or, I don't ever want to get that mindset, because I got this disease, and I definitely don't need it telling me I'm better or well. I didn't intentionally mean to come to y'all. I I was on my way to prison. And y'all interrupted my trip. And I'll be forever grateful for that. Well, I really wasn't going to prison, I didn't think, but I couldn't figure out how to get out of the mess I was in. So I come to one day, and the cops are knocking on my door, and that's not unusual, because usually they come to my house, but they were always looking for the neighbor, because he was always in trouble and stuff. So I go to the door, and I'm fixing to tell them that he's over there, and they went through my house like you see them do on TV, and they found what they were looking for. I couldn't explain to them that all that stuff in that bag was what I took when I drank all night to help me stay up all day so I could work. I couldn't tell them that other bag of stuff, they had me with possession with intent to distribute, and I'm going, I'm not distributing these nowhere. These are mine, But I couldn't tell them. That other bag was what I took when I drank all night. I used to work for the railroad, and we would get to the end of the road and we'd start drinking, because I was trying to prove to the boys that I was one like them. And so when you drink all night, you can't stay up and work all day. So I had little helpers, and they found that bag of helpers. Well, when you drink all night and stay up all day, you need something to help you kind of go to sleep so you can stay up all night drinking again, kind of do it all over again. Well, they found all that, and they took me to jail. Now, I was amazed, but I scared them before they did that, because I couldn't go to jail looking like I was looking, because I was not appropriate. So while they were busy going through my house, I just slipped out the back door, because my pants were on the line. Because I knew I couldn't go to jail looking like I was looking. So I slipped out the back door while they were busy. Well, somebody noticed I was gone, and it scared them. And it scared me even more when they come around the trailer with them guns drawn, because they thought I was running or something. I wasn't running. I just couldn't go to jail looking like I was looking. So I go to jail. And I sit in jail. And I sit, because I can't call him, because she's home. And she don't like me calling him. So finally I got this deputy to call him in case she was home. And he come got me out of jail. And, I didn't go home to take a shower after I was in jail all that time. I was in jail about a week. Now, that was a long time for me. But it's not the only time I've been to jail, but it's the longest time I've been to jail. And I didn't go, go home, take a shower, none of that kind of stuff. I went to the bar to see if I was missed. And they did miss me. They told me they did. And they had heard about my dilemma, and I was in deep. I was in it deep, because, at that time, I mean, this was back before getting busted was fashionable. You know, I mean, you did some serious time when you got arrested, and I was looking at losing my job, and that was the only thing I had going for me was that job. That was how I proved to you that I was okay. That's how I proved to myself that I was okay. That's how I proved to everything to everybody was, you know, you would ask me my name, I'd tell you that I worked for the railroad. Yeah, sick, isn't it? Yeah. I was one of the first 6 women that they hired in the Southeast, to kind of equal out that, you know, men women equal rights thing. And I did real hard to try to prove that I could do the work. And I'm fixing to lose it, and I don't know what to do. My back's in a corner. So I go home, and there's a knock on the door, and there's that guy. Now, this guy, we used to drink a lot together, me and this guy. I mean, a bunch of us would, but I mean, we really partied hard and all that kind of stuff. But he had went away somewhere, and he come back talking and have sentences. So we didn't hang out with him much because, well, we didn't know where he'd been. But, you know, would come on, go have a beer with us. Oh, I'm not drinking one day at a time. Okay, well, we'll see you tomorrow. And we'd take off, you know. And you know, we'd be sitting on a train, and you know, he was talking about letting go and letting God, and we're let go and let God do what? You know, he didn't make no sense. He was talking in them half senses. So here he is, and I'm going, oh, good Lord, I do not have time for him today. You know, usually I'm pretty patient, and I can drink my way through anything, but I don't know if I had enough that day, you know. But there he was, and you know, and I let him in, and we started talking. He said, I know how you can get your job back. I said, sign me up. He signed me up for treatment. Now, I had never heard of treatment. I guess I was living under a rock or on a stool in a bar or something, but because I'd never heard of treatment. I didn't know you could go toe up. I mean, I got my little paper sack packed, and I pressed my pants, and I'm sitting out on the steps of that trailer like I'm going to school. I'm waiting on the bus. Before I got signed up to treatment, these 2 old railroad men come to my house, and they started talking to me. And I'm gonna tell you, they were telling me all that stuff that they should have just been buried with. You know, today I know they were trying to 12-step me, but I'm telling you, they were telling me some stuff that I just didn't need to hear. And I just thought they were being dirty old men. Sure. Today I know a little different. But so one of the railroad men and his wife were the ones that took me to treatment. She was in Al-Anon. Now I never heard about Al-Anon, but she informed me what it was on the way to treatment, because we come from South Georgia up to Statesboro. So on the way to this treatment center, I'm realizing that I might have overreacted. Because, I mean, this guy's been sober for like 5 years or something like that. At that time, I'm going, good Lord, why would you want to do that? You know, I didn't get it. I mean, you know, now I can stay sober for a little while. Well, shoot, I can do anything for a little while. I've even been married through a little while. But, I mean, you know, so I know I can do anything for a little while. And I was going to go to treatment for a little while until I got my job back. And then I was going to carry on like normal, right? Well, they were talking about not drinking one day at a time, and it'd been 5 years for them. I'm going, not interested in that. And this Al-Anon lady, she was telling me all about it, and I'm getting scared because I know this is not where I want to be. I have overreacted, but then they said, just do it one day at a time. Okay, I can do that. So they sign me up. We get to the treatment center, and this AA man goes off and signs me in for treatment, I guess. And this Al-Anon lady's got a hold of my arm. Now, this time, because of all my drinking and running and all that kind of stuff, I'm about half the size I am now. So I was really skinny. And she had bones rubbing on bones because she wouldn't let me go because, I mean, I was shaking more than I was when I stood up here. I was scared to death. And she walked me down the hall, and we went through a double doors, and which was fine, except she just left me there. Now, I didn't have a handle on my side. Now I'm looking through this glass, and this lady's walking back down that hall, and I'm really scared. I'm starting to cry. And I'm not one of these little pretty dabbers and all that kind of junk. I'll blow snot. My nose turns red. My eyes puff up. I mean, and I look a mess. And I'm plastered up against that window. And I know if this woman looks back, she'll turn around and come get me and know that I've overreacted. You know, that heifer walked straight down that hall and never did turn around and walk back. I hated Al-Anon. Them were some mean women. So I get in this treatment center, you know, and I'm in trouble, but I'm not stupid. So they're wanting to fill out all the paperwork, and they're asking me questions, and I got to tell them enough where they can fill out the paperwork. So that's what we're doing. And then in comes this girl, and to this day I don't know who she was or any of that kind of stuff, but she said, "Honey, you never have to feel the way you're feeling ever again on the inside unless you choose to." She turned around and walked out. Now, she might have said some other stuff, but that is all I heard. Now, I don't know about y'all, but when I got in treatment, I'd been feeling like crap inside a long time. I had been wishing I was anywhere except where I was. I was, and she told me I didn't have to feel like that again. Now, I don't know why I believed her or why I even thought it was possible for me. Because I come up in the South, I had been to them churches and they'd been praying for me and dipping me and dunking me and all that kind of stuff, trying to make me different and making me like them and all that kind of stuff, and none of it took. So I figured I'd done crossed done that one sin that you never, whatever that is, but I knew I'd done it because I wasn't getting the jolt or whatever, that change, I didn't qualify for that change. But I believed her that day. She said, "All you got to do is do what we ask you to do." So I started doing that. And, I stayed in that treatment center the required time. And then when they got ready to send me out, they didn't want me to go home yet. What they wanted me to do was go to a halfway house. No, that's fine. I mean, I'm good with that. Except the one they wanted to put me in was one with women. And I have issues with women. My sponsor tells me those are character defects, but back then they were issues. So I'm still wanting to keep my job. So I said, "Sign me up for this halfway house." And they did. And, and this halfway house has rules. They want you to travel together like a pack of ducks. Okay, I can play follow the leader. I'm good with that. And then they wanted me to wear all my clothes. Well, they want me to wear clothes I don't even have or own and hadn't had and owned in a long time. So, because if you were drinking like I were drinking, I'd get tangled up in some of that stuff trying to put it back on, and then I'd be drunk, and then I'd get tangled up and I'd fall, and then I'd get tickled and I couldn't get up. Or they would get hung up under the seat. Now, this is back when you could get your hand and stuff under the seat, not like today. But and then they'd come out and they'd be greasy or ripped or something in it. I just have to throw them out the window anyway. Or I would be drunk and just forget them. So now they want me to put all this crap back on. I don't ever want to forget. When I don't know and I come to you and say, "You know what, I don't know." You don't laugh at me that day. We laugh like the devil the next day, but that day you don't laugh. And I had, we had to go shopping, and we had to travel in groups because we're a pack of ducks. And I told those women that I didn't know what size I wore. So those ladies shoved me in a dressing room and they started parading my underwear across that department store for me to try on. So anytime I think I'm all that in a box of rocks, I remember that day. Because when I come to y'all, I didn't know much. And what I thought I knew was useless when I got in these rooms. But that always happens with me. When I'm honest with you, and that ego deflation at depth, and I tell you the truth about me. I always get that magic. And I found out that those girls were like me. They were scared. We were always in competition and, trying to outdo each other and all that kind of stuff. And they felt the same way. And I didn't know that. So I stayed in that halfway house. And in this time, I'd done some of that step work that they asked me to do. And, one of those steps is making amends. And I made amends to that Al-Anon lady. And I asked her if she would sponsor me. And she said she would. Now, I wasn't, I'm November 14th, 1983 is my sobriety date. So I'm sober almost 27 years. Now, I'm 28, almost 28. When I got sober, we didn't have a bunch of women staying sober, and all we had was just a bunch of old farts hanging out in these rooms. And I'm going to tell you, those Al-Anon women saved my butt. Because this railroad man and this AA man and this Al-Anon lady, they double teamed me. He'd talk to me about programs. She'd talk to me about what girls did in the daytime. I didn't know. But she helped me with that. She taught me how to dress. She taught me a lot of that stuff. And I'll be forever grateful for her taking the time to do that with me. Because this is a family illness. And when I come out of that halfway house, I was scared to death. Because the Al-Anon lady picked me up and the AA man. And And she told me, she said, now, if you get kind of antsy before the meeting, just call and we'll come get you. Okay. I get it out, and I go in my little trailer and I'm pacing the floor. Well, she told me I could call. Well, I can't call because she's probably at lunch. Well, she told me to call. Well, I can't call. They're probably doing dinner. Well, she told me to call. Well, they're probably busy with other people. They can't call. I'd walk by that phone. I wore the rug out. Finally, I picked up the phone. In 2 minutes, she was there. And I went to the meeting. Now, when I come to y'all, I'd just come out of treatment. And I was an alcoholic and a drug addict. And I'd say that out loud in them meetings. And there'd be some old fart in the back and he'd scream about his hemorrhoids. What has that got to do with anything? He said, that's right, and don't you forget it. Them half sentences. Y'all are crazy with these half sentences. Every time we'd go to a meeting, he didn't care if it was birthday night and there was 12 people there. That was a big crowd. And, I'd introduce myself. My name's Sandy. I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict. And he'd scream about them stupid hemorrhoids. I didn't get it. What? What's... I don't get it. He said, that's right. Don't you forget it. He taught me how to pray. I prayed every meeting he'd have a wreck and die. He drove 30 miles to that meeting every week. I prayed he'd have a wreck and die. Because he pissed me off every meeting we sat in. He taught me about principles before personalities. I wouldn't go let that old fart take my chair. I'd just cuss him and turn around and walk off. He kept screaming about them hemorrhoids. Finally, I asked somebody, why is he doing that with me? They told me, Sandy, come here and let me talk to you. When you're in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous and you say you're anything other than an alcoholic, you're saying you're different from us. Now, you may be. But if you are, what we're doing may not work for you. You may have to go find help somewhere else. Why don't you get in that big book and see if you can identify as being an alcoholic? Okay. I can do that. So I got in Bill's story and that's what they told me to do. Get in Bill's story and see if you can identify with how Bill felt. Not what he did for a living. Because I always had issues with Bill because I wasn't a stockbroker. I couldn't identify. They flipped that around on me. Identify with how he felt. Now, I had been drinking and I know about that, the loneliness and the despair and the humiliation and never getting enough and stealing and wanting to kill yourself and not having enough guts, all of that. So I could identify with Bill. I can identify with him feeling like he had arrived. I felt like that when I got that job. I knew that I would be all right now if I had enough money. And so I could identify with that. And he told me about how his drinking progressed. I didn't start out drinking as much as I was drinking. And I identified with that. So I go back to the meeting. It's Thursday night. And I'm waiting on this old fart. I'm laying in the gap. Y'all made me an alcoholic now, so I'm good. And so I go in there and I'm, my time to share. And my name's Sandy. I'm an alcoholic. And I didn't hear nothing about no hemorrhoids. I didn't know I could cure them either. We used to go to the meeting just to see who would hit him. It wasn't all this love and tolerance like I see around now. They would get up in his face and cuss him up one side and down the other, and he'd sit back and laugh. He was crazy. He was just crazy. That guy taught me a lot, and taught me a lot. About this time, there's a bunch of us going to meetings. Now, when I got sober, there was one meeting. There was a meeting 2 times a week in the town where I lived, and then we'd drive. We'd get in the car and we'd drive 35 minutes, 45 minutes to the meetings in the other towns. Now, today I drive, I used to drive that far to go to work, but back then it wasn't like that. We'd drive to the next town, and whoever had the biggest car drove, and we'd all pitch in, and we'd have the meeting going, we'd have the meeting there, and then we'd have the meeting coming home. And the meeting coming home, that's where I got to ask all the questions that I wasn't going to let that old guy know I didn't know. But I'd ask the people in that car, what are they talking about spiritual experience? I don't believe in God. I've been kicked out of them churches and all that kind of stuff. And y'all explained that stuff to me and I was in the back seat for all my clothes on. That was a spiritual experience. I know, it was the small things were so impressed with me. I could not believe that Al-Anon lady, she would get in a car with a bunch of alcoholics and go to a meeting and they wouldn't have sex. I did not get it. That's what I brought to y'all. Okay. I brought one sick chick to y'all. And but we getting those, and that's what we did. And then we get home and we put on like regular pot of regular coffee and we'd talk till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I just knew we were gonna float off. We're getting so spiritual. And that's what we did. We went to meetings every night of the week. And during this time, this I was sitting up front with this guy, and we'd get to talking and stuff, and he asked me on a date. Now, an AA date. I got to tell y'all about an AA date. He come and pick me up. We went to dinner before or after the meeting, just depends. It was usually before because we live in a small town and everything was closed if you waited till after. And then we'd go to the meeting and he'd bring me home and he'd leave. I didn't see the point of no AA date. I mean, he wasn't trying to kiss nothing, touch nothing, grab nothing. And I'm just going, what in the hell's wrong with him? I done got sober. I had put on 10 pounds and I'm looking really good. So I'm over at the Al-Anon's lady's house, and she was a gardener, and we're out in the garden, and I'm pissed, and I'm slinging dirt because I don't get it. I do not get what's wrong with that guy, the reason he ain't wants some of this, because I'm telling you, I'm sober now, and I'm looking good. And I'm cussing, and I'm slinging dirt, and that Al-Anon lady, I bet you she was about to wet her pants. Because I know how I am with my girls, what I sponsor today. Some of the stuff they come up with that they believe, I'll give you an example. I'm sponsoring a girl and she said, Sandy, I almost had sex. I said, how in the world do you almost have sex? She said, well, I had it, but I didn't enjoy it. Yeah. I did not laugh at her face that day, but I'm going to tell you, I about wet my pants after she left the house. The stuff we tell ourselves. So I can only envision what this Al-Anon lady is over there. I thought she was digging taters. She was probably just hurting from laughing so hard. And I'm telling her, I don't understand. He hadn't tried to kiss. I don't get it. I thought he liked me. Well, Sandy, maybe he does. Well, I wished he would show it. And, she said, well, maybe he is. Don't make no sense to me. I mean, I'm used to attention. I'm trying to clean it up, but y'all know what I'm talking about. And I don't get it. She said, well, honey, maybe he's trying to show you some respect. I said, respect? Well, that's when they've been with you one night and they come back the next day. And that's the kind of respect I was wanting. Well, anyway, we were doing this AA date, and we rocked on. And I'm going to tell you, with these AA dates, when they bring you home, you don't know whether to kiss or close with the Lord's Prayer. I mean, good Lord, give me a break. An AA date. So we done that date in a long time, and a long time in my life. We probably dated 4 months before we got married. And he did. He asked me to marry him. He put a ring on my finger, the whole 9 yards. And I'm trying to clean this up. I've always heard about you don't buy the cow unless you test the milk and all this kind of stuff, right? He wasn't drinking no milk. His decision, not mine, okay? But, and I didn't get it. I just didn't get it, and we got married, and that Al-Anon lady was there, and everybody from the meetings was there, and it was a celebration, of y'all, of what y'all had done with 2 people who had completely destroyed their lives, and we walked out of that church, Mr. and Ms. AA. In my head, and I told y'all I had this disease of perception, so y'all been warned. So we walk out of this church and we just walk off in the sunset and burned up. Really, I thought we were Mr. and Ms. AA. I mean, we would 12-step because we were man and woman, and we would haul a drunk to the ends of the earth, and we'd get up day or night. I mean, that's what we did. I mean, we didn't know we had another option. And in that relationship, things rocked on. And what I know today is I wasn't honest. I wasn't honest about what I felt, and I was trying to make his God my God. That's the big part that I wasn't honest about. And we would go to those meetings together, and we would be like, I'd be over here trying to get out the door, and he'd be over here trying to get out the door. But when we'd walk in the meetings, we'd be hand in hand grinning. Mr. and Ms. AA, right? But at home, there was like a silent line drawn down our house. And, I didn't cross his side and he didn't cross mine. And, that's just the way we live, one day at a time. And I went to a conference and I met a man, and that gave me the courage to get out of that relationship. And I went home after that conference and asked him for a divorce. Now, there's some details in there that I've left out. I slept with this guy. Yeah. And that's just who I was at that time. I wouldn't leave a vine. I mean, I was like Tarzan going through the trees. I wouldn't let go of the vine unless I had a firm grip on another one. That's just what I did. So I went home and asked for a divorce, and it was awful. I go in, I'm 5 years sober, and I'm sitting in the meetings, and they're calling me a whore. And I can't come to y'all because y'all taking sides, and it ain't mine. Now, I know what I did wasn't right. But, I didn't have a safe place to go, and it was bad. It was just bad. I am forever grateful for Narcotics Anonymous because they let me come to their meetings. I respected where I was when I was there and introduced myself appropriately, and they didn't ask any questions, and they didn't know about me and him. They didn't care, and they saved my life. Now, this old guy that I told y'all that I cured, right? If you had gave me 5 minutes, I would have told you what an SOB he was, because he run newcomers off. He told me he wanted me sober. He did not want any of this. Pissed me off. I couldn't fathom that. And but I took his inventory. You give me 5 minutes, I'd tell you what a SOB he was and how bad he treated everybody and all that kind of stuff. And I'm about 5 years sober, and I'm in my house. I can't go to the meetings no more, and I don't feel like I can. Because, see, when y'all start calling me names, I just stand up in the middle of the meeting and cuss all y'all out and then walk off. And you can't go back to meetings when you act like that. I could. Well, I didn't want to, So I'm sitting there on the bed, and, drinking's not an option. I'm 5 years sober. Drinking's not an option, but blowing my brains out are. Because I don't have anywhere to go. I don't have any solution, and I don't have y'all. I don't have y'all anymore. Instead of picking up that gun, I picked up that phone and I called that old man. Because one thing I know about him is he was always telling me the truth. And I was crying and all that kind of stuff. And he said, honey, just get in the car. Well, first he asked me, he said, can you drive? I said, yeah. He said, get in the car. So I got in the car. And, when I got to his house, he was standing on his stoop and his arms were wide open. And he didn't say to me, how come you said that about me, or why'd you do that? And none of that. He placed principles before personalities, and he knew the alcoholic was in bad trouble. And him and his wife put me in their hip pocket, and I'll be forever grateful. And just lost it. The guy that was up here doing all the announcements, he talked about the tapers. Well, this guy and his wife taped in the Southeast, and they allowed me to work the tape table, and I'll be forever grateful because I didn't have no money. I mean, they let me work the tape table to pay for my room and board, and I helped them out like that. He said I did, but we know the truth. We know the truth. And I heard a speaker from California talking about he was in the meeting with three of his ex-wives, and I guarantee you, I talked to him after he got finished. Because I wanted to know how he sat in a meeting with those ex-wives without wanting to shoot them or cuss them and all that kind of stuff. And it's about putting principles before personalities. So I started praying for God to give me the strength to do that. And I went to the district meeting, because at that time I was district secretary and in come this guy. I'm going, God, not today. I know been praying about this, but really today in front of all of them, And you know how we do before the meeting. There's a chatter and everybody's talking and there's laughter and all that kind of stuff. When he walked in, it stopped. A hush fell over that room, and those people in that room didn't know whether I was going to get up and start cussing, because that's what I did, or what was going to happen. What I did was I got up and I walked across that room and I stuck my hand out in that man and I said, I'm glad you're here. Now, I did not tell him I was glad to see him there because I wasn't, but I was glad he was there. This is Alcoholics Anonymous. This isn't something I do on Tuesday or Thursday because I'm bored. My life depends on me being able to come here, and so does his, because he's an alcoholic like me, and we don't have no place else to go. So think about that. If you have relationship issues, I know I've sponsored some girls, and they start dating in the meetings. I say, you know what, you can do that if you want to, but here's the deal. If it stops, you cannot quit going to that meeting. You just need to know that up front. I mean, you can quit and get yourself another sponsor, but as long as I'm your sponsor, you going. And I've had some that's grown through some really neat experiences because of that, putting that principle before personality. Well, this guy, we get divorced and all that kind of stuff. And about this time in my life, I figure lack of children is my dilemma. I told y'all I have this disease of perception, okay? It was working at about 7 years sober, just as good as it was when I got here. And so I find me a man's got a couple of kids, and I make their business my business, and before you know it, we're married. Now, I don't know how I did that for the fast. If I could apply that to my work, I'd probably be a little higher up in my company, but and I find out lack of children is not my dilemma. But you know what? The one thing I didn't have to do that time was swing out on another man. And I'm grateful for that, because there was kids involved, and I didn't want all that mess. There come a time in my life where I got tired of hurting people, and that's spiritual growth for me. Because used to, I didn't care about who I hurt, as long as it was all about me. And this time it was different. And I'm getting gas at a gas station, and a nosy neighbor that lived across the street pulled up and said, "I know somebody you need to meet." I'm like, I am not even divorced yet, okay? I mean, I have just got my stuff settled in this apartment that I've been in a couple of times because of some other divorces. And I'm going, you got to be kidding, right? She says, "No, Sandy, he's going through a hard time and he needs you." Suckered me right in. I said, "Okay, tell him to call me." But I didn't give her my phone number. No. I drove off on them all proud. Now, I didn't know this guy was a telephone man. They have a way. And so this guy calls me that night, and he says, I said, "Oh, there's only like 2 houses between us." He'd been living down there forever, and I've been here several times in my little apartment. And he come up, and we had a cup of coffee, and I said to myself, "Self, before he gets here, if he's ugly or weird or anything, I'm going to lie like a dog, and I am out of here, and I'll make amends tomorrow. Because I am not going to put up with any of that crap." So in comes this nice guy. The nice guy that I always run from, that I always thought I didn't deserve, that was never any fun in my life. That's who's at my door. So we get to talking, and we have a cup of coffee. And, and he's pretty nice. And then, and he left, and it wasn't an AA date, and it was all good with me. So we started, he was going through a divorce. I was going through a divorce. I knew how to cook, and he had the food, so we got to eat. That was our common solution. And that's how we started out. And I started, we started liking each other, and I'd be at a like a AA potluck or whatever, and I'd be dipped. He'd show up. I didn't know he was an alcoholic, but he'd show up. He'd always sit in the back, but he'd always show up. And, we'd slip out of town and go have dinner out, on payday or something like that, because I'm still not divorced, and I don't want these kids thinking anything's, I was concerned about that. So one day he was at the house, and somebody knocked on the door, and I shoved him in the closet. Because I didn't know if it's going to be those kids or not. And, I just didn't want to hurt him any more than what this was already doing. So, we laugh about that today. So we start dating, and then I know that I know. I know that if something don't change in me, ain't nothing going to change in my relationships. And I don't know what I need to change. Just like when I come here, I don't know what God wants me to be, because I have such limited vision. And it's just like that. I don't know. I just don't have a clue. So I start asking God to take me where he wants me to be in this relationship. Now, I've done an inventory, of course. And I found out that I'm a kicking, screaming 2-year-old. I want everything my way, and I don't want to share nothing. Now, that is not permanent basis for relationship, but that is where I had all my other relationships. That's what they've been based on. So, I told Wendell, I said I needed to do some work on me. Didn't know how long it's going to take. Wait, don't wait. I don't care. I need to do this for me. And that's when I done that time and done the inventory and started asking God to take me to a different place, to a place I don't even know what is or how to describe it or any of that kind of stuff. Because my mama raised 4 of us by herself. I don't have a father figure in the house I don't have any of those examples. And one morning I woke up and I knew that I knew. And Wendell called me that day. He said, I need to talk to you. I said, you know what? I need to talk to you too. So we talked and I just started asking God to show me how to be a kind loving girlfriend, kind loving person. And we started doing that. And I told Wendell AA was first with me. I don't think any of us knew what that meant at the time when we said it, because I had put an AA on the back burner before and I wasn't going to do that again. I was trying to help raise those 2 kids, and I was going to 1 meeting a week whether I needed it or not, and I'm going to tell you, I need more. So he said all that was fine with him. He asked me to marry him. Probably about 3 months after we were dating, something like that. I don't know. In my life, so much happens in a day, it seems like months. So my time reference is bad wrong. So I don't intentionally mean to lie to you, but... And I told Wendell, I said, I'll marry you 1 day at a time. He said, I'll take it. I've been married forever 3 times. I wasn't doing that again. And 1 day at a time, I can be a kind, loving wife. 1 day at a time, I can be faithful. 1 day at a time, I can really act like I care. 1 day at a time. Some days I don't. I'm not going to lie to you. But I can act like I do. It works. Let's see, July 2nd, we're celebrating 17 years. And, of being married. Yeah. Couldn't believe it. I already told y'all, I told him that, AA was first. And, he'd sit home a lot of nights, when I go to meetings, sponsor girls, all that kind of stuff. And he's my biggest fan and supporter. And I'm grateful for that. I don't have to fight that. I don't have to fight going out the door to get to a meeting. And I say to meetings with women who have. That's not my story. I'm real spiritual when I got money. I am. Wendell lost his job. He was making good money. And I was looking good on it, in all that. We had all the toys and all that kind of stuff. And he lost his job and we couldn't pay for him. The old guy that I cured, he let Wendell paint his kitchen cabinets so Wendell would have some money. That's what y'all do for us. Y'all let us do our steps so we can have a little bit of dignity. And you're helping us out. That's what y'all do. And they did that, and the bank started coming getting all these toys, and a sponsor of the day said, I got to tell you about my sponsor. The old guy sponsored me for a while, but then it's quit working, and I knew I needed a woman. Well, I started asking women in the meetings. Now, I shared with y'all how I was in some of those meetings. No, Sandy, no. No. I was told no a lot. And I heard a lady speak at a conference, and she said she knew that she was at a place in AA, whether she had to get in or get out, and I knew that I was there. And I called this lady and asked her if she'd sponsor me. And she said she will. And she's long distance. She said, you'll call me 1 time a week, and I'll schedule that time. I'm thinking to myself, I just asked you to be my sponsor. I should have access to you 24/7. What do you mean convenient to you? Out loud to her, I said, yes, ma'am. She said, we'll go through the big book. Now, I've been attending big book meetings since I've been sober. And at this time, I'm about 10 years sober. And I'm thinking, I am one of the original big book thumpers in this area. What do you mean go through the big book? Out loud to her, I said, yes, ma'am. She said, you'll wear a dress to your home group meeting. I go to AA and I'm comfortable. What do you mean wear a dress? I may have something in the back of the closet that I bury people in, but I don't think I got a dress. Out loud to her, I said, yes, ma'am. And that lady started sponsoring me one, just like that. I'd called her at a time she set. I've had to pull off on the side of the expressway and stuff to find a phone booth back before cell phones and make that phone call. And I will tell you, that woman changed my life. But what changed my life really is I was willing to listen to somebody else and do what they told me to do without any question. And I got the results of that, just like I always do. But I got to tell you a story about this dress thing. Okay, I told y'all I got in trouble and that what got me into treatment. Well, the court date come around and the lawyer wanted me to wear a skirt. And I just said, I got something in the back of the closet to bury people in and all that kind of stuff. And at that time, it happened to be a skirt. It didn't have no tags in it and it had a zipper in it. Well, without a tag, where do you put the zipper? I don't know. So I called my Al-Anon fashion coordinator because y'all know how they are. They're, to the nines. And she's not home. But hey, my husband's there, right? He said, just put the zipper in the front. I'll put that zipper in the front. Just put it in the front like we do. I'll put that zipper in the front and I go to court. And I just think I'm all that with that stupid zipper in the front. I don't cut tags out of my clothes today. But sometimes it's just about being willing. I didn't have to go to jail. They gave me first offender's probation. And that probation officer and I had a really good relationship. He would send me people that come through his door that got in trouble with drinking and drugs. And I was forever grateful for that. So this lady's back to talking about me wearing these dresses and stuff. And I started doing that. And she said, you got to get a commitment at the meeting. I go, commitment? The chairman does everything. What do you mean a commitment? She said, a job that you do every week. I don't know what that is. She said, you like to pee on a clean toilet, don't you? Trick question. Don't answer. Don't answer. I answered. I said, yes. She said, that's your commitment. Now I'm in this little bitty podunk town. I got on my dress. I'm looking all good and I'm scrubbing a toilet and people at the door are laughing at me. Get you a sponsor, especially one of them California ones. Look what they'll make you do. But I was down there doing it and my life changed. And I don't know if it was that toilet. But I tell you what, I don't want to quit doing it to find out either. You know what I mean? So she was the one that told me that when these toys started going away, she said, go to the meeting and tell them. I can't do that. I got so much pride and ego. I cannot go to the meeting and tell them. She said, Sandy, this ain't about you. She said, this is about newcomers sitting in that meeting that need to know that they can stay sober if their car gets repossessed. Okay, I'll go to the meeting and tell them. So I went to the meeting and told you. You know what? Y'all laughed. And I have been told, by some people, I am so glad you said that out, because I'm having trouble, so it works. It always does. You know how that is. It's my ego that gets in the way. So, I'm at that time, I'm the one driving all the girls that I sponsor to meetings, and we always get up and go, just outside areas for meetings and stuff like that. And I can't do that. She said, tell them, ask them for rides. I can't do that. I cannot ask the girls I sponsor for a ride to the meeting because I don't have no money. She said, yes, it is. And you say it just like that. Okay, so I start telling these girls that, and I'm going to tell you, it was amazing what they did for me. They were just honored to give me a ride to the meetings. And I didn't have to get drunk behind that. There was this little old lady in the meeting, and she was one of those gruff women. She talked like this, like one of those good, deep smoker voices where she'd been hanging out in the bars for years, you know what I mean? And I loved her. And gruff old lady. She called me one day. She said, get over here. So I'll go over there. She's on Social Security and all that stuff. And she said, I got this box of welfare crap. Do you want it? I'm going, yeah, I want it. It was cheese and flour and powdered milk and all that kind of stuff. And she said, if you don't take it, I'm just going to throw it away. And I go, Juanita, thank you so much. So I got it and I was going up to the car and she popped me on the butt and she said, alcoholics got so much damn pride. I said, honey, I know it. And when she popped me on the butt, she put $10 in my back pocket, and that was our gas money, and that's what y'all do for us. That's what we do for each other when we just get rid of that pride and let people really know what's going on. and I want those people just helped me so much. Those old timers, the people that knew me better than I even knew my own self. We got through that. Wendell got a job in Pocatello, Idaho. Idaho, where are we going? Because I quit school. I didn't know. He showed me on the map where we were going. So he took off up there, and I'm going to tell you, it was like God opened up the fairy tale book and threw both of us in it and just said, have a good time. He was making more money than we had made in a long time. I mean, I come up in the South, and Pocatello has 4 seasons, and it snows every year. A lot. Now, I've seen snow 3 times in my life. So I'm at like a district meeting or something like that, and I asked this guy, I said, where do I go and take snow diving lessons? I always go to y'all for my answers. He said, lady, most of us just get in the car. So we just got in the car and we learned how to do it. But I mean, seriously, I had a hard time in Pocatello because I'd heard the tales about people moving with time and things being different. And they do things different up there. The meetings are an hour and a half. And they don't close with the Lord's Prayer. I thought that was just like sacrilegious or something. I know, they open with a moment of silence and they close with the Serenity Prayer. I mean, that's totally wrong. I was not allowed to tell them, though. Couldn't tell them. My sponsor said, why don't you go in there and act like a newcomer? Sit in the same chair every meeting you go to. The same meeting, sit in the same chair. Just start sticking your hand out at the door. Be a greeter. Okay. And a lot of those people thought I was new, because I sat in the same chair. She said it was important for them to know that I was there or not, even though they didn't know my name. Because the meetings were bigger than what I come from. And I started sponsoring it there. And, and if the sponsor people, you got to find out where the district meetings are. You can't take them if you don't know, and they are not going to know I don't know. I'm not telling them. Pride and ego again. But it got me to the district meetings, and that got me to the assemblies and that kind of stuff, and I found home there, and we were there about 8 years. I got a job, good company, and I'd heard tales about, the men in this particular area, and I had some speaking engagements lined up, and I had to go to this man because he don't know anything yet. And I go to him and I say, I need to have some time off, and it gave him my little list, and and I take a Friday off to come and speak, and he's looking at all these towns, and he said, Sandy, what is this for? I said, well, I do volunteer work for a nonprofit. He said, really? I go, yes. He said, what nonprofit? I said, okay, God, me and you, buddy. I said, Frank, I'm an alcoholic. I've been sober X a number of days, and sometimes I'm asked to share my story, and that's what these are. And he sat back in his chair, that moment before they tell you you're fired and it scares the crap out of you. And he sits back and he breathes out, and I go, uh-oh, here it comes. He said, honey, Sandy, we just make baubles here. He said, you go and you do with our blessing. Thank you, Frank. So I got out of that meeting. Well, the next day was the staff meeting with all the managers. Well, he proceeded to tell them that I'm an alcoholic and that I'll be out of the office every once in a while, and that they will support me in my efforts. Okay. I've never had a problem with my anonymity. And if I did, I didn't then. But I never have. Most of the time you're guilty by association, because everybody that knows me knows that I'm in AA, and that's just the way it is. And it holds me in good stead. It makes me act better than I feel most of the time. So Frank come by the desk one day. He said, so-and-so is having trouble. Go just do what you do. I go, what are you talking about? Do what I do. He said, I don't know what you do. Just go do it. She got problems with drinking. Just go do what you do. So I went and did what I did. I 12-stepped her is what I did. And we used to do a trade show in Las Vegas, and I had the opportunity to come in, a day early, and Frank, the owner of the company, his wife, got to sit in the meeting and hear me share. And I'm going to tell you, that's one of my blessings that I got, because he was just totally blown away. Because I work for a jewelry manufacturer. Now, when I'm up here telling y'all I steal, that's good, but this man's got bazillion dollars in the vault, and he's, But I got that chance, got that chance. Well, about this time, my mama got sick. And now my mama kicked me out of the house when I was 13. Well, she told me she tells me she didn't kick me out. She told me I couldn't drink under her roof. She kicked me out. I mean, hello. So, and we hadn't been under the same roof in a long, long time. And she got sick, and she not enough to where she needed constant care, but enough to where she couldn't take care of the house. I said, Mama, why don't you come up and stay with us for a little while? Because she loved my husband. Oh my gosh, he was like just sunset and rose in him. And she said, I don't know. I said, well, come up and stay a week. If you don't like it, you can go back, and if we'll get you back home, no trouble, no problem. She said, okay. So she come up just pat for a week, and she moved in with us. And I'm going to tell you, because of what y'all had taught me to do here, I was able to show her what a kind, loving daughter looked like, what a kind, loving daughter acted like. And, and she got to know y'all. And it was amazing. It was amazing. She lived with us 2.5 years before she got sick and she died. And you know what? I'm forever grateful for those 2 years. We had a blast. Just had a blast. Not long after she got there, my husband had a stroke, and that will scare you. And my mama was very instrumental in teaching him how to read again. He told me that he'd rather go to the therapist than he had take lessons from my mama, because we had to get those See Dick and Jane Run books and all that kind of stuff. And you know what? Y'all brought a meeting to our house when Wendell had that stroke, and y'all were there through all of that, because it was really scary. His brain was bleeding, and they didn't know whether they was going to cut it open or, send him home. If the bleeding stopped, he could go home, and if not, he couldn't, and it stopped. And when we come home, y'all brought a meeting to the house, and my mama was able to sit in on that meeting. Now, my mama come up in them Southern Baptist churches, and she told me after y'all left, she said, I have never felt the presence of God like I did in that meeting. I said, Mama, that's why I go. She said, honey, I just don't blame me a bit. You just keep right on going. I said, yes, ma'am. And when she got sick, and Wendell, I was out of town, and they were waiting on me to come home. And, when it was time for her to pass, y'all were there. The doctor that was taking care of her was a home group member. The nurse was a home group member. There was me and Wendell, and we closed with the Lord's Prayer. And I didn't have to sit there and say, Mama, I wished I should have said, or Mama, I wished I should have done, because y'all gave me the opportunity to do that. Because y'all showed me what a kind, loving daughter looked like in action and in deed and in words, and I followed y'all's lead. And my brothers come up. I've got 3 brothers. I've got 1 older and 2 younger. And my brothers got to come up for the funeral. And my home group's an open meeting, so I invited them to go, because I like to show them off, And they came, and y'all got them again. All of them commented on how powerful that meeting was. They know God got them, but they don't know what it's called. They know they walked out of there different, and they don't know what happened. And Wendell's opportunity at work in Idaho, things started slowing down, and there was some work in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Boss said, you can volunteer to go, or you can go. So Wendell went. And I like him one day at a time, and I went with him, And Albuquerque's been hard for me. I moved from a city of 50,000 people to a city of 1 million. I'm going to tell you, it's big. The meetings are big. It's overwhelming. And it's taken me about 2 years to get settled in. I got a good home group. I got a good bunch of drunks there. They just, like when I got sober, they'll do anything for somebody trying to get sober. And I am forever grateful that we are wherever we are. But it has taken me some time, and I got real scared. And one more time, I'm having to act like a newcomer in these meetings and sit in the same chair and be a greeter and all that crap. So y'all will get to know who I am. Because y'all don't want to know what I think about it in my time. You don't even know what time I got, and you don't care. You just know I'm the girl in the meeting that talks funny. Hate that part too. Well, not so much, but Albuquerque is it's growing on me. I'm even beginning to like brown because you see a lot of it there. Me and my husband got this joke. What color brown do you want your house? Brown or brown? But I'm making a life there. I've got a new job. I'm just on 7 months and I really like it. And, and the people there are just so nice, just so nice. So, what I know today for me is that if I come in the rooms and tell you all the truth, I'm going to be okay. If I try to practice these principles in all of my affairs, that means ego deflation at depth every day, asking God to direct my thinking and action every day. I'm going to be okay if I don't take a drink. And I'm going to tell you, I've been able to do that one day at a time, thanks to y'all. Thank you so much.